Welcome to Self-Care You podcast. I'm your host, Sharon, the number one self-care giver in the world. This podcast is the intersection of self-care, advocacy, and compassion for self-care givers. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And so, with this episode, what we will talk about is past influence, future decisions. Let me say that again. Past influence or experiences, you want to say it that way, future decisions. And so we're going to dive deep into the role that your past experiences play in shaping your future decisions. And you're like, Sharon, what do you mean about that? Of course, my past is going to influence my future decisions. However, what ends up happening is that a lot of times you, me, others will allow negative past experience to influence our future decisions or our decisions right now, meaning that a lot of times they end up being based on emotions. And so, in saying that, when it comes to your past, it is like everything that has ever happened to you, plus the thing, plus your history, plus um, I'm saying your history, but your parents' history, your grandparents' history, your ancestry, planet Earth, period. And so you may have heard of epigenetics. It is real. This is why sometimes you may, if you really look back, you can probably see where you your parent, your grandparent may have similar behaviors. And especially if you may have an uncle or auntie or a grandparent or great grandparent that somebody may say, oh, they act just like such and such, and you never ever met. And it's almost like instinctively, you may react in a certain way. We all have it. Now, there are some, and again, there's good habits and not habits, good things and bad things. But there are emotional imprints that we have within us. So that's pretty much um, part of the epigenetics. The other thing is when emotional imprints are also when things occur in life. And so most of you, especially if you've been listening to this podcast or to the self-care you nuggets, in that you've heard of the ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. I like to call them childhood experiences that can adversely impact us. And adversely impact, it's not always bad. It's not always the negative. And so in saying that, in when it comes to us make a decision, it's so subtle, y'all. It's so subtle. And what prompted this episode, even though I've talked about it before, but I really want to horn on to it, especially for those of us who are entrepreneurs, who are business owners, who are leadership roles, in that you can be making a decision for your company, for your household, for your team, that you think you're making a sound decision. And just to back up a little bit, this is kind of where our blind spots come into play, meaning there's parts of us, parts of ourselves we're not aware that are really driving, or they're really in the driver's seat. And so sometimes you can be making a decision for your company and for your team that you're thinking that it's the best decision ever. And so really make sure that your emotions are not at play, or you're not allowing someone else. So, what does that look like? What does that mean? It means, for instance, let's say you're doing business with someone and someone says that they do not want your product or do not want your services, and you take it personal. No, they're just not into it. They're not ready for it yet. or your supervisor, and you need to provide feedback to someone regarding a project that they're working on or regarding something that they're not doing. They need to pretty much step it up. What is it that you go through in order to do that? I know with my first experience as a supervisor is even as a what is it called when I supervise students, even that of not feeling comfortable. It's kind of like, oh, I don't like confrontation. It's that piece of it. That some kind of way, there's some experience that I had as a child, probably when it comes to correction, someone probably was correcting me, and that's something else regarding the school system in that. But there is something within you, within your business, within what you're doing in your life that you're going to make sure you're not going to feel, you see what I'm saying? Feel that way again. So are you really looking at the biggest picture? If someone no longer wants to be on your team, or let's say you work for a company and you're a supervisor, someone says that they quit, do you take it personal? Do you try and find out? Like, even though there may be going on, sometimes, you might want to try and see if you can do anything to keep them to stay. And sometimes it's time for people to leave. But if anything, you need that feedback so you can improve and be a better company, especially if you are having a number of people who are quitting in a short period of time. Now, sometimes it is just in some positions, it's just how it goes. It's a high busy thing and it's really just not for everybody over a long period of time. But even then, what feedback are you getting? Even for those of us, again, who are entrepreneurs and business owners, when it comes to, this is something that I'm learning, is like when I'm putting out content, how to really look at that information. Don't take it personal. How to really see the what is it, pretty much the rhythm, the analytics of it. And that's the other thing to be aware of. And so when it comes to the analytics of life, what are you taking in? Again, our past experience. You can have an experience in which you're like, oh well, this thing happened to me and I have trust issues. So how are you going to really interact just because of a feeling come up? Now, I'm not talking about, sometimes we have an intuition, but you need to be able to use discernment. And so this is why it's so important. This is why self-care is so important. That self-awareness is so that you can be aware of yourself. You can be aware of things that are in the bottom of the pit of you that may be in the driver's seat. And you don't want it to be in the driver's seat. You don't want it to be. I discovered some things. Let's just say, for instance, I grew up in a single parent household. I grew up without my father. Oh, and I've always said I have no ill feelings about my father. And I really feel like it was the best thing, especially as an adult, once I just say once I saw his life and saw what he was able to offer or not offer, it really was the best thing. But one thing I can say, you may have heard of fatherless daughter syndrome, and we say like daddy issues and mommy issues. And there's, all of those things. And for the most part, I would say most people living without a parent really do okay. But one thing that I will say, by having both parents involved, not saying they need to be together, but to definitely have a positive and healthy relationship with their child, there are invisible blueprints that are created just by them being there, just by them interacting. Certain things are instilled. And the opposite is true too when there is no presence, when there is no guideline and I'm talking more so about the biological parent. Even though others can step in, but there is still something again lingering in it. I always say our soul knows that something is missing, So, in saying that, in the thing that when a parent is missing, in that there are invisible scars, invisible wounds that you don't even know that exist. And so this is why self-care is so important, meaning like going back to, you've heard of shadow work, going back to our childhood self, going back to certain aspects, certain experiences that we do remember, just always it's kind of both, is not just focusing on cleaning out but adding to, because sometimes I think we forget to add to. Yes, we want to release, yes, we want to detox, yes, we want all of those things and let go, but remember to pour into you. And that's the part of self-care I think that gets forgotten, and people may think, when they're relaxing and doing all that stuff, that they are doing that. And so you're like, Sharon, what does all of this have to do with the past influence and future decision? It has everything. Another example I would give you, I would say that I can remember I will ask a family member, because we didn't, there was a period of time that we didn't have a car. And so I ask a family member, it's like, oh, can you come and pick us up? Can you pick us up? Or pick me up, should I say? And, there was like, oh, I'm coming and coming. And there was a period of time that it didn't come out. And I kept looking forward to that. As a child, that's just hurtful. You know what I mean? And I can remember, and I don't know when the thought came, but I would just say, I remember having the thought, oh, you cannot depend on people. But when I started doing my work, then I realized, oh, that wasn't the lesson. Because when you really think about it, anything that needs to be done, that's a priority that must be done, you're going to get it done. You don't really, I'm not going to say you don't need anybody, but you're going to find a way to get it done. The lesson wasn't, oh, you can't depend on people. That wasn't the lesson. The true lesson was, and I want to say I had two revelations about it, but the first revelation about it is that the lesson wasn't that you can't depend on anybody. The lesson really was how to deal with disappointment. That's going to take me farther in life. In disappointment is learning how to manage, deal, not take it personal, to be able to continue to move on, to be able to not let it linger. Yeah, you can have your feelings hurt. And again, it's almost like in society, oh, you got a hurt feeling. Oh, let's do something to make you feel better. No, let it hurt and move on. You know what I mean? Allow people to go through those feelings, but to be able to manage it and where it's not lingering. And it seemed like there was a second revelation that I had not too long ago about it. But that's the main thing. Oh, I know it's what I said previously. The second revelation that I had about it was that anything that needs to be done is going to get done. It's like if it's something that's really important, something that you really want. Of course, I was a kid, and so when it comes to transportation, I'm reliable on adults, and not unless there's a, transit system that I was able to take. So those were the two revelations about it. So no, sometimes the lesson isn't the first thing that comes up. So meaning that just continue to ask, what is this for me? What can I take from this? And what can I do? Because that's the other thing. And who can I become? And so in saying that, that's to say from that particular example, it's like, what else in life has occurred where even though I got things done, but when it came to the emotional piece of it, how much when I felt disappointed or rejected or got declined for something, did I take it personal? What about you? What have you taken personally? And so in saying that, this is why it's so important. Um, whether you do it in counseling, but even if you go to therapy, you still need to do the work. Even when you go to therapy, this is a lifelong journey of us just continue to better ourselves, to investigate ourselves, to, what are you doing, when it comes to you, to study you. Again, self-care you. Self-care you is to study you. Like when it comes to even yoga, the philosophy of yoga. A lot of times people just think about the asanas. Oh, yeah, those are wonderful. And those are going to help you as well as strength training, too. Helps you with adversity, but it also helps you to really contemplate about yourself, to have the revelations, to have the insight. Again, the self-awareness is the biggest part of ourselves in our likes and dislikes. Whatever our standards are, we're going to change them, of course, to level them up. And so, again, your experiences, your journey really helps you in receiving feedback about your future and get down to the root of things, and allows you to be able to venture out. Sometimes you can be scared to do something and say, where does that come from? Because as kids, most of us, not all, most of us are fearless, but somewhere along life, it's like all of these things, subliminal messages get into us, and I always thought that I was like, I don't want to use the word above, but I was like, oh no, none of those things have gotten to me, and how much I see how certain things really do. And so, even though sometimes when we talk about do not allow your emotions to get the best of you, especially in making decisions, it's really important because it is you. 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 And when I say that, meaning there are times this is not me, there are times you will make hard decisions, especially when it comes to family, especially when it comes to friends, especially when it comes to someone you know. Sometimes I always like to say, oh, it's much easier with someone you don't have a relationship with. But for someone that you do, it is difficult. But this is how you stay true to yourself, true to your vision and your mission, in that the truth of you will set you free. It's not the truth, it's the truth of you that will set you free as long as you are in alignment of you. Um, because along with that, sometimes we say, oh, God is testing me, the universe is testing me. Yes, they are. Are you going to choose you? And when I say this, I'm not saying this in a selfish way, because sometimes we can be so geared of comforting others where you're not comforting yourself. And so, in allowing your past influence, when it's good, of course that's positive, but of course, I'm talking about the experiences that are not so good, and sometimes you allow them to stop you for being the best version of yourself, and especially in doing the work that God has set you to do, you know and so, in saying that, again, we talked about the emotional imprints and how you can make the best decisions for yourself and the best decisions for your company. And it also allows you not to fall into those pitfalls again. And especially when it comes to family, friends, I kind of already talked about that, because your emotions can run you. And sometimes some people may feel that it's cold. Look, oh, I can't believe they did that. But that other person was really thinking about themselves too. You see what I'm saying? Where they weren't thinking about others, but in making decisions, look at it, how it impacts you, how it impacts if you have a company, how it impacts your family, and those are not in a particular order, how it impacts your community, how it impacts the world. So you see, this is why it's so important for you to self-care you. This is why it's so important that sometimes you cannot allow your emotions to get in the way. Sometimes, again, because you want people, when you're pulling someone up, We always say, oh, yeah, we need to go back. But remember, go back to those who are ready because they're not ready. They're going to pull you down because you want people. Sometimes you may need to give someone some water, but are they willing to dig their own ditch, their own well? Are they willing to do that? Because you did. You dug your well. Yes, you can share, but you need others to share along with you too. So all of this are intertwined with your decisions, meaning do not allow your emotions to dictate your decisions. Because when your emotions dictate in your decisions, you may need to find a new hole to dig. And why should you dig a new hole? Sometimes it's okay, but sometimes it's not. And so when you self-care when you continue to do the work, you're going to discover some magnificent things about yourself, but also things that you still need to work on. Sometimes things that you can still improve on. It doesn't matter how good and kind. Yes, you can be good and kind. But again, sometimes in being nice, it's not going to always get you where you need to be like in alignment with the person that you need to be in alignment with. So some decisions that you make, like, just think about it. Do you like every decision that other people may make? No. So why should everybody like, or, you know, your decision is the best decision? It may not be. And sometimes it may not be at this time. And so, yes, sometimes some people may say it's hard work. It's a lot of work to be well, but it's even harder work not to be well. It's harder. It's harder. It's harder. And it's more devastating. And it impacts not just you, it impacts the people around you in your home life, in your work life, in the community, in your home. And so you have the ability to level up. You have the ability to make things better. Who says it's going to be easy? No one said it's going to be easy, but it's worth every dime that it is. Because the more that you invest in yourself, the better decisions that you will make, and you will be open to listening to things that can improve your life, improve your well-being, improve your finances. And so again, go ahead and dig. If you need therapy, contact someone in order to do that. Sometimes you may need a life coach, but sometimes you may need to talk to a pastor. Sometimes you may need to talk to a friend, but do you talk to yourself? That's the thing. Because sometimes be truthful to yourself. So again, do not have your trust issues. Sometimes it can be on target, but use discernment. See where this is coming from because you could be literally leaving money at the bank, money somewhere if you don't, you know? So self-care you in a way that's going to challenge you because anything that challenges you, it's going to benefit you. So let's stop running away from that as well. Ooh. And so another thing is when it comes to you self-care you and with again stress is everywhere. It's just a part of life. Just by waking up can be stressful, but it's delightful too. And when I say that, just meaning the energy from the world, the energy that it takes. And then sometimes it may be the things that are not so good. And so as a part of self-care you, go ahead and go to my website so that you can get the Rest, Rejuvenate, and Recover ebook. And also look for the upcoming course, or should I say, virtual practices, so that you'll know exactly how to do these things. So there are times in which you can You may need to soothe yourself, relax yourself. Then there are times you may need to rejuvenate and have a boost. And so these are different practices that are at your fingertip. And we show demonstrations in the videos of how you can do that. And so go ahead and go to the website affirmholisticnetwork.net and get the Rest, Rejuvenate, Recover ebook. And so thank you for listening to the sponsor. And so again, allow your past, even the past that's not so great, to influence your future decisions in a great way, not to hold you back. And again, a lot of this stuff is subliminal. A lot of this stuff is subconscious. Because if you're not really learning more, reading, having conversations, and having conversations is so important because reading alone, you get a lot. Watching videos, you get a lot. I listening to podcasts, you get a lot. But having conversations alone isn't good either. But having conversations, to me, it just combine everything. You really see it, you really feel it. And then sometimes you can discover that you're not alone. You're not alone in your strength, and you're not alone in the things that you may not be so good at, and which you may need more work. And so all of this is just so that we can be better, 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 and being better may not be the things that you can see. It may not be the house and the car. And of course, we're not defined by that anyway. But it's who you are and how you be. It's not just the doing, it's the being. And so with Self Care You podcast, it's so that you can elevate. And especially for those of us who are entrepreneur, I mean, I've learned so much about myself. If anything, I've learned more of what I need to work on, like discipline and planning and executing, the three most important things. And so, yes, you can do any and almost, I want to say almost any and everything that you want. But just know there's work behind it. And so, thank you for joining me for this Self Care You episode. Remember to comment and let me know what resonated with you. See you next time.